Welcome back, everybody. Today we're getting into this pistol that you see in my hands right here and that you guys saw throughout the intro. It is the Glock 43X. This is the newest offering from Glock, along with the 48, which I'll get into in another video. And these ones came out, I believe, in January of 2019. As I'm recording this, it's March 2019, so there's still a relatively new pistol to the marketplace. Glock's making a ton of them because they're selling really, really well from everything I've seen. So I wanted to go ahead and do a review on it, get the information out there to you guys. And I want to thank the folks over at GT Distributors who sent this out, making this review possible. I'm not on Glock's approved reviewer list for whatever reason. They're not fans of mine. So the folks over at GT Distributors did send this out, so thanks to them. And what we're going to do, of course, is let the dogs take a look at it, make sure it's good to go, shoot it a little bit more. And we're going to get into the details of the pistol at the end. We'll let you know what I think of it overall. Now that the dogs have checked it out, we'll get into the details of the actual pistol itself. We'll start down here at the bottom and kind of work our way up for some semblance of order. It does come with two 10-round magazines, and these really are one of the things that allows this pistol to be. The magazine design is unique, so only the 43X and 48 as of right now take these magazines. You can't use your Glock 19 mags, and you can't use your Glock 43 mags. You can see it's labeled all the way down. It's sort of like a stack and a half. People want to say this is a single stack. Well, that's actually staggered as well. This, of course, has a little bit more stagger to it. Mags are metal lined. We do have our bright orange followers like all the Gen 5s do. It's cut for ambidextrous mag release. The mag release on this pistol is swappable, so it'll work in either the left or right side of the pistol. And up front here on the base plate, you guys can see that bevel to it. All the Gen 5 guns have that. So that is the magazine, and just to compare it again to the 43, you guys can see there's this notable difference in terms of size to get those extra 4 rounds. The mag wall on the pistol has a slight bevel to it, but it is not flared, which I do like. I wouldn't want a flared mag wall on a concealed carry gun personally. It just increases the amount that the pistol will print. However, we do have this little piece there at the bottom, which is nice. It comes out, and what that does for folks when you take a proper firing grip is that it moves your hand up into this undercut there on the trigger guard as much as possible. So it definitely aids in that, gives you a nice positive feel when you're gripping the pistol. Speaking of feel, it does have a decent texture on it. It's a little bit less aggressive than, say, like the full-size Gen 5s in terms of feel to me. It's very similar in terms of feel to the 43. However, you just have, of course, much more real estate, so it's a little bit more secure in the hand. However, if I was personally going to conceal carry, I'd probably put some Talon grip tape on there because I like it a little bit rougher. Again, the mag release is reversible, like we already mentioned. It has a nice big texture point to it, so you're not going to miss it when you go to release your magazines, which is nice. We do have this beaver tail here for folks with really large hands who get slide bite from Glocks. That's going to aid in not having it happen, not having the slide bite your hand, for those of you guys who have that issue. Continuing forward, we have our slide stop and slide release, and like all of the Gen 5s that I have in so far, it has a pretty terrible finish on there. It just wears super fast. Not sure why that is, but if I was Glock, I would probably take a look at that. It does, of course, allow you to drop the slide, but it doesn't stick out a lot, which I like. The Gen 5 full-size guns, in my opinion, they stick out a little bit too much, at least for my preferences anyway. Some folks may really dig it, but I've never accidentally actuated it, which is nice. With a nice thumbs high grip, that can happen sometimes with certain pistols. Continuing to move forward, you'll see that we do not have a light rail on there, and I don't know this for sure, but just my sort of hypothesis on why is that for a 1913 or even Glock spec rail to be on there, they would have to rather widen the frame out, and they didn't want to do that. However, the TLR6 does work, as you guys have probably seen so far in this video. So there are some options out there if you guys want to add a light to it. Trigger on this gun feels very similar to all the Gen 5s I have so far, which is a good thing. I've said that the Gen 5 Glock trigger is the best factory trigger they've released. I stand by that, and the 43X is no exception to that. Again, we'll verify that we are clear. And what you're going to have, of course, you have this safety built into the trigger, so that way, for those who are new, if you push back on the trigger but don't disengage this little lever, it will not fire. But when you go to pull it, there's a very distinct wall on the Gen 5s, which I like, versus some of the earlier generations. And then to break, it's going to be right at 6 pounds on my scale. And the reset here, very tactile, very audible. And it's just, it gives the shooter more feedback. The older Glocks, you kind of were guessing as to when that break was coming. With this one, you don't. You definitely know when it's coming for sure. The finish on the slide is what Glock calls their NPVD finish. Obviously, it has a silver two-tone look to it with the grip, and it definitely has a nickel-based component to it somehow. Glock's not been really specific on what the actual finish is. They say it's impregnated into the material, the metal, which I don't doubt. It definitely has good lubricity to it overall. It is not showing anywhere at all, which is awesome. And one thing I should also point out while talking about the slide is that it does have a little bit of a bevel here up front, which is nice for reholstering as well. But so far, absolutely zero issues with the finish. I know some folks don't like the two-tone look, but I personally think it kind of looks cool. The sights that come on the gun are plastic, and in my opinion, are just terrible, so I always replace them with other options that are out there. We have the XS Sights DXT2s, so these are their newest ones with the bright ring around the front that you guys can see there, but it's a IDOT type of sight. Basically, you put the dot on top of this little notch here in the rear, and that's how you align it. But the ones that come from the factory, from Glock, again, they're made out of polymer. It has a wider U than the older ones do, which is an improvement in my opinion in terms of just actually using them to get hits on target, but they're still junky, and again, I think Glock really should be embarrassed to put them on a pistol. Disassembly of the pistol is straightforward Glock, so again, we're going to lock the slide to the rear, verify that it is unloaded, and it is. Drop the slide, point in a safe direction, press the trigger, and then we're going to pull back about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch there on the slide, pull down on these two tabs here on the frame, and your slide will come right off. At this point, we can pull out our recoil spring. It is metal, it is a dual recoil spring, and then our barrel here is the same dimensions as the Glock 43, so just over 3 inches, I believe. It does have what Glock calls hexagonal rifling. Some folks will call it polygonal. However, they still advise not to fire a ton of lead reloads through it because you can't have buildup in there. But it's cold hammer forged barrel. It has their version of melanite in terms of finish. It's holding up pretty well, as you guys can see. We're definitely seeing some wear, but not too bad. A little bit there on the hood. Reassembly is pretty simple. Just going to drop it in there. Take our recoil spring and guide rod, same thing, push it down, and then slide it back onto our frame. The one malfunction the gun's had so far is when it had 10 in the mag and 1 in the chamber. We're replicating that here with some self-defense ammo. It's 147 grain Spirit Gold Dot stuff, so 1 in the chamber, 10 in the mag, and we'll see if it has any issues. Don't expect any, but you never know. When this gun was first announced right before SHOT this year, a lot of people were saying, why does this exist? We don't need it. It's a weird size, etc. And I'm going to tell you, it probably exists because of this thing right here, the SIG P365 9mm compact pistol, very small. It's very similar to the Glock 43 in terms of size, as you guys can see here. However, it holds 10 rounds. So a lot of people really like that, very slim. And the P365 rather has a great magazine design that allows for that. And these things are selling like crazy despite some of the problems they had when they first came out. They're still selling really, really well. So Glock saw a demand signal for 10+1 9mm pistol. So this is what they came out with. In terms of size, though, you'll see they really don't compete too much with. They're very similar. However, what you'll see there is that the grip is much, much longer with the 43X, and it's also a little bit wider, particularly up in here, than our SIG is. So the SIG, again, this one so far has been good, but a lot of them have problems, but it's still a super, super popular pistol. And while we're on the size comparison front, let's talk about the 43. and kind of show you how those line up. Again, the slides are going to be exactly the same in terms of length, and they are interchangeable, so you can run your 43 slide on your 43X frame. It functions without issue, but you guys can see the big difference there in length. Of course, you're giving up 4 rounds versus the 43X rather, but all in all, very similar in terms of design. Just the frame here, I should point that out, on the 43X is fatter. That's to allow, again, for more rounds. With the 43, you'll see that we do have these little swells here on both sides. That doesn't, those aren't there rather with the 43X, simply because the frame itself is wider in those areas already, so you don't need it. Of course, another popular pistol out there is the Smith & Wesson Shield series. You guys can see here how they stack up. That's a 2.0 Performance Center. In terms of length, pretty similar. Again, we're going to be a little bit fatter though here in the frame with the Glock, but you are, again, adding a little bit more length with the Glock again. But this one here carries, with this mag in there, 8 rounds versus the 11 that we have here, possible with the 43X, assuming you topped off the chamber. Compared to a 26, which is another great concealed carry gun, you'll see very similar in length. The 26 is a little bit longer there when you line them both up, but the 26, of course, is going to be shorter with the 10-round magazine in there, as you guys see it. And the one I'm sure a lot of people really want to see it compared to, the 19. So here's our Glock 19. You guys can see size-wise how they compare. Definitely longer in the barrel. The 19 has a 4-inch barrel, much fatter as well to accommodate for the 15-round magazine that we have in the 19, and length is the same. So you guys can see that right there, and I think that's a point that a lot of people looking at the 43X were disappointed with. They're saying, you know, the hardest part sometimes, depending on how you carry, to conceal on a gun is the grip, and if it's the same length as a 19, why not just carry a 19? That's true to some extent. I get where they're coming from. However, a thinner gun is still easier to conceal. Really, when you're talking about concealed carry guns, the quarter of an inch, the eighth of an inch, all of those little things, they do add up. So pros and cons to each, but that is how they stack up size-wise. In terms of weight, unloaded with the magazine in, you guys can see the weight there for the 43X. Again, unloaded, magazine in on the Gen 5 19. You're definitely adding a little bit of weight there. Plus, of course, your 5 extra rounds are going to weigh a little bit more as well. I think we covered most of the important points on the pistol so far outside of price and reliability, and we're going to get right into those now. Price-wise, this one is generally coming to market between $450 and $500 from what I've seen. That is the plastic sight version. If you go with the night sight version, you can bump that up by about $50 to $75. So it's not inexpensive. However, it's less expensive than full-size Glocks, so that is good. Reliability-wise, we've had a grand total of 1 malfunction with the gun, and that was when we had 10 rounds in the mag and 1 in the chamber. I believe that was Fiocchi ammunition, and it just failed to cycle. And I duplicated the exact same setup, i.e. 10+1, several times throughout the review and didn't have another malfunction like that. I just think it was a kind of a one-off thing, but otherwise it's been very reliable, so that's good. Shootability on the gun is good. For a gun of this size and weight, it tracks really well, and that's likely due to the thin slide and the sort of shorter barrel there, less material moving back and forth, and you get that full-size grip on it with your entire hand. It is very easy to shoot well, it tracks well, your follow-up shots are nice and quick, and of course the trigger is predictable like we talked about. Now, in terms of what I think of it overall, I think it's kind of a funny option from Glock. I say that because the 10-round mags require it to be, Glock 19 length, as you guys saw there, which is, again, depending on how you carry, the hardest part to conceal. So, why would they make that? Well, the thinness does help for sure in terms of concealment, particularly if you're carrying either appendix or like 4 or 5 o'clock position. It makes a difference without question. Now, versus a P365, man, if that gun, the P365 I'm talking about, if that gun has the bugs worked out that we talked about in that review, I see it continuing to sell probably much better than these. However, I think one thing that's probably attractive about this pistol for a lot of folks is folks who live in banned states where their magazine capacity is only 10 rounds anyway. It's a nice lightweight gun that you could conceal carry and then leave in the nightstand as well at night. So in terms of a dual use gun, and that would be the same for free states, I should say, as well. It's probably a pretty decent option for that. I'm sure there's going to be mag base plate extenders coming out because it's a Glock and aftermarket support is huge for these. So when that happens, you're probably going to be able to bump it to about 12 rounds And then, you know, it gets really close in terms of competitive options with the 19. So it's an in-between gun for sure. Is it for everybody? Nope. But I think it's for a lot of people, and I think sales so far have kind of showed that to be true. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my thoughts on it. If you guys have any questions about the pistol, by all means, you can post down below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page. As always, that's the best place to reach me if you actually need an answer to a question that you have. I don't see a lot of the comments on YouTube, Full30, and elsewhere, but on Facebook I do, and I will respond to you relatively quickly. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you're new here and you're not subscribed to the channel and you like what you saw, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I think it's over here or over here. It's in one of the places. But hit that subscribe button so you can see all of the videos, and also click on the notifications bell as well, so that way you guys actually see when I post videos in your feed. So thanks as always for watching, regardless of whether or not you're subscribed, and I hope to see all of you in the next video.